Catherine, Princess of Wales, the woman the public has come to see as a quiet strength of the monarchy, did something no one in that room believed she would ever dare. She stood up, letter in hand, and read Camilla's private word aloud in front of the entire royal firm. And the room froze. The date was late autumn. The location was a private reception room inside Buckingham Palace, the kind of space reserved for the inner circle only. No cameras, no press, just a family, the senior household, and a handful of advisors who formed what insiders still call the firm. The air already felt heavy. Everyone knew something was wrong. Catherine had arrived looking composed, but those who know her well noticed the set of her jaw, the way her hand stayed folded a little too tightly in her lap. William sat beside her, expression unreadable. Charles and Camilla occupied their usual places of quiet authority. The rest of the circle, senior private secretaries, a couple of trusted cousins, the Lord Chamberlain's people, waited for the formal part of the evening to begin. No one expected the formal part to be postponed. Catherine rose. She did not wait for permission. She did not glance at William for reassurance. She simply stood, reached into the slim leather folder she had carried in with her, and withdrew a single folded sheet of paper. The paper was cream-colored, heavy stock, the kind used for personal correspondence within the household. When she unfolded it, the room went silent in the way only a royal room can go silent. Every breath held, every eye locked on the page in her hands. She began to read. The first lines were careful, almost affectionate in tone. Camilla writing as a stepmother might write to a daughter-in-law who had grown into her role. There were references to shared burdens, to the weight of public expectation, to the need for unity above all. Then the language shifted, subtle at first, a phrase about certain media narratives that had been allowed to take root, a mention of the importance of controlling the story before it controls us. And then the passage that made several people in the room look down at their hands. Camilla had written, in her own hand, that Catherine's continued emphasis on transparency and authenticity was becoming a liability, that the public's affection for the Princess of Wales was beginning to overshadow the carefully rebuilt image of the Queen Consort, that, in Camilla's view, it might be time for Catherine to step back from certain public platforms to allow the focus to return to the King and Queen. The letter suggested that William should be encouraged to counsel his wife toward a quieter role for the next year. It ended with a line that landed like a stone. We have all sacrificed. It is her turn to understand the cost of the crown. Catherine's voice did not shake. She read every word clearly, deliberately, letting each sentence settle. When she finished, she lowered the letter and looked straight at Camilla. I received this 3 days ago, she said. It was not meant for my eyes. It was meant for William's. It was intercepted, copied, and returned to its intended recipient without anyone realizing a second copy existed. I am the one who kept that copy, and I am the one who decided the firm needed to hear it in the open. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. Charles's face had gone very still. William's hand tightened once on the arm of his chair and then released. Camilla did not look away. Her expression remained controlled, but the color had drained from her cheeks. Someone at the far end of the table, a senior advisor who had served 3 monarchs, finally spoke. His voice was low. Your Royal Highness, this is highly irregular. Catherine answered without raising her voice. What is irregular is a letter that treats the Princess of Wales as a problem to be managed rather than a partner to be respected. What is irregular is a suggestion that my husband's loyalty should be tested against his mother's preferences. What is irregular is a quiet assumption that I would never find out, and that if I did, I would stay silent for the sake of appearances. She placed the letter on the polished table in front of her. No one reached for it. I have spent years doing exactly what was asked of me, she continued. I have carried the weight of public scrutiny while protecting this family's privacy. I have smiled through every speculation, every comparison, every attempt to cast me as either saint or threat. I have done it because I believe we were building something stronger than the old patterns. But this letter makes clear that some patterns never changed. They simply learned to speak more softly. William stood then. He did not take the letter. He looked at his wife, then at his father, then at Camilla. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but there was an edge in it that few in that room had ever heard directed at the family itself. I did not authorize this conversation to happen this way, he said. but I will not pretend I am surprised that it has. Mother, if this letter is authentic, and from the handwriting in the paper, it appears to be, then we have a problem that goes beyond one piece of correspondence. We have a problem of trust. Camilla finally spoke. Her tone was measured, the tone of a woman who has survived decades of public hostility by never raising her voice in private. Catherine, I wrote that letter in a moment of concern for the institution. I never intended for it to be weaponized in front of the household. If the wording was unfortunate, I regret that. But the substance remains. The monarchy cannot afford competing centers of gravity. We have seen what happens when the public is invited to choose favorites. Catherine's reply was quiet and devastating. You are not speaking of the institution. You are speaking of your own position within it. There is a difference, and the people in this room are intelligent enough to hear it. At that point the room fractured. Not into open argument. The firm does not do open argument in front of staff, but into tight, controlled clusters of conversation. Advisors murmured to one another. A private secretary began taking notes that would never leave the building. Charles rose and asked for a brief adjournment. The request was granted, but no one truly left. They simply moved to the edges of the room, speaking in low voices while Catherine remained standing beside the table, the letter still lying between her and Camilla like an unexploded charge. What happened next would determine whether the firm closed ranks or whether the fracture became permanent. William did not immediately follow his father. He stayed near his wife. Camilla remained seated, her hands folded, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond the far wall. And Catherine, for the first time in years, made no effort to soften what she had done. She had gone too far, according to every rule the family had ever written for itself. She had taken a private communication and made it public within the only circle that mattered. She had forced every person in that room to choose, in real time, between loyalty to the old order and acknowledgement of a new reality. The letter was no longer a secret. The accusation was no longer whispered. And the Princess of Wales had just declared, without raising her voice, that she would no longer be managed from behind closed doors. The adjournment lasted 12 minutes. When the room reconvened, the atmosphere had changed. People who had entered as neutral observers now carried the weight of having witnessed something irreversible. Charles looked older. Camilla looked composed but isolated. William looked like a man who had finally stopped trying to keep two competing loyalties in perfect balance. Catherine did not sit down. She waited until every eye was on her again. Then she spoke one final time before the evening could be steered back toward safer ground. I did not come here to destroy anything, she said. I came here because the letter made clear that destruction was already underway, quietly, politely, and at my expense. You may decide that I have gone too far. You may decide that the cost of this evening is higher than the cost of the letter itself. But I will not pretend the letter does not exist. And I will not allow it to shape decisions about my family while I am expected to smile and say nothing. She looked at Camilla one last time. You wrote that it was my turn to understand the cost of the crown. I understand it perfectly. The question now is whether the rest of you still do. The room did not erupt. The firm does not erupt. But something fundamental shifted in those few minutes. The letter lay on the table, unread by most, yet fully known by all. Catherine had forced the private into the semi-public. She had taken the language of management and turned it into evidence. And in doing so, she had placed every person present in the position of having to answer, sooner or later, a single question. Whose version of the future would the firm protect? Outside the palace walls, the public still saw only the polished surface. Inside, the surface had cracked. The first session of that evening was over. The second had not yet begun. But everyone in that room understood that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The 12 minutes of adjournment did not cool the room. They only gave every person present time to measure the damage. When the circle reconvened, the letter still lay on the table exactly where Catherine had placed it. No one had touched it. No one had dared. Charles spoke first. His voice carried the careful gravity of a man who has spent a lifetime learning how to close doors that should never have been opened. This evening was never intended to become a tribunal. We are family. We are the institution. Whatever was written in a moment of private concern must now be set aside for the greater continuity of the crown. Catherine did not sit. She remained standing, hands resting lightly on the back of her chair. With respect, Your Majesty, the letter was not a moment of private concern. It was a strategy. It named me as an obstacle. It proposed that my husband be used to manage me. That is not continuity. That is control dressed as duty. Camilla's eyes narrowed, but her tone stayed even. You are reading intent where there was only caution. The public has always preferred a fairy tale narrative. Your popularity is a gift to the monarchy, but gifts can become burdens when they begin to rewrite the hierarchy. I have lived through the consequences of divided loyalties. I will not watch this family repeat the same mistakes under a softer vocabulary. William turned fully toward his mother. Then speak plainly. Do you believe Catherine's role should be reduced? Camilla held his gaze. I believe the king and queen must remain the central focus. Anything that dilutes that focus, however unintentionally, requires correction. The word correction hung in the air like a blade. Several advisors shifted in their seats. One of the private secretaries looked as though he wished the floor would open. Catherine's voice cut through the tension with quiet precision. There it is. Not partnership. Not shared burden. Correction. You wrote it in ink, and now you have said it aloud. The difference is that this time the entire firm is listening. She picked up the letter again, not to read it, but to hold it as evidence. I have spent the last decade protecting this family's privacy while the world dissected mine. I have endured speculation about my marriage, my health, my children, and my ambitions. I did it because I believed we were building something stronger than the old rivalries. But this letter proves the old rivalries never left. They simply learned better manners. Charles raised a hand, attempting to reclaim control. Enough! The letter will be destroyed. The conversation ends here. We will not allow a private document to fracture the household in full view of those who serve it. William's response was immediate. Destroying the letter does not destroy the thinking that produced it. Father, if this is how decisions about my wife and my children are being framed behind closed doors, then the household already is fractured. Catherine did not create the crack. She simply refused to pretend it was not there. A senior member of the household, a man who had advised both Elizabeth and Charles, finally spoke. His voice was low and measured. Your Royal Highnesses, the practical reality is that this revelation cannot be contained within these walls forever. Staff talk, advisors talk. If the substance of this letter reaches the outside world in any form, the narrative will be uncontrollable. The question is no longer whether the letter should have been written. The question is how the firm responds in a way that preserves public confidence. Camilla's composure flickered for the first time. Are you suggesting we reward this public airing of private counsel by treating it as legitimate grievance? Catherine answered before anyone else could. I am not asking for reward. I am asking for honesty. For years I have been told that loyalty to the crown means silence when it is convenient for others. I accepted that bargain because I believed it protected the children and the future. But silence in the face of a letter that treats me as a problem to be solved is no longer loyalty. It is surrender. She looked around the room, meeting every gaze in turn. Some of you have spent decades managing appearances. You know how quickly a carefully constructed image can collapse when the public senses that the people behind it no longer trust one another. If this evening ends with the letter destroyed and everyone pretending nothing happened, then the fracture simply moves underground. It will surface later, uglier, and in full view of the cameras you fear so much. William stepped closer to his wife. The gesture was small, but in that room it registered like a declaration. Catherine is not asking for a public statement. She is asking for a change in how decisions about our family are made. No more letters that treat her as an external factor. No more suggestions that I should be the instrument of someone else's preferences. If the firm cannot grant that, then the firm is already choosing sides. Charles' face tightened. For a moment the weight of the crown seemed heavier than the man wearing it. You are forcing a choice that need not be forced. Catherine's reply was soft, almost gentle, and therefore more devastating. The choice was forced the moment the letter was written. I only made certain it could no longer be ignored. Silence returned, thicker than before. The advisors exchanged glances that carried years of institutional memory. They had seen crises managed with careful statements and closed doors. They had never seen a Princess of Wales place a private letter on the table, and refused to let the conversation be redirected. Camilla rose at last. She did not reach for the letter. She simply straightened the cuffs of her jacket with deliberate calm. Very well. You have made your point. Catherine, You have placed the household in an impossible position in the name of transparency. I hope the cost of that transparency is one you are prepared to carry, because the public may admire defiance, but the institution is always survived by something quieter and far more durable than admiration. Catherine met her eyes without flinching. Then let the institution prove it can survive honesty as well. I have no interest in destroying what remains. I have every interest in refusing to be quietly erased for the comfort of those who find my presence inconvenient. The evening did not end with reconciliation. It ended with a carefully worded agreement that the letter would be retained under lock by the private secretary, that no further discussion of its contents would occur outside the immediate family, and that future decisions regarding public roles would be reviewed jointly by the King, the Prince of Wales, and the Princess of Wales. On paper, it looked like compromise. In the room, it felt like a ceasefire. As the household began to dispose, the heir still carried the charge of what had been said. Catherine remained beside William. She did not smile. She did not soften the moment with reassurance. She simply stood in the place she had claimed, not as a managed asset of the firm, but as a woman who had decided the cost of silence was higher than the cost of exposure. Outside the palace, the night continued as if nothing had shifted. The guards changed. The light stayed on in the private apartments. But inside the circle that calls itself a firm, every person present understood the truth. The old rules of quiet management had been publicly broken by the one person least expected to break them. Catherine had gone too far by every traditional measure. And in doing so, she had forced the monarchy to confront a question it had avoided for generations: whether the future of the crown would be shaped by those who still believe in control, or by those willing to risk the truth in open view. The letter remained. The fracture remained, and the Princess of Wales, for the first time, had made certain that neither could be hidden again. What happens next will not be decided in a single evening. It will be decided in the weeks and months that follow, in the careful recalibrations of public schedules, in the private conversations that never reach the press, and in the quiet testing of whether the firm can still close ranks when one of its own has refused to stay silent. Catherine has drawn the line. The rest of the family must now decide which side of it they intend to stand on. The story is far from over, but the night the letter was read aloud will be remembered as a moment the carefully maintained surface finally cracked, and the Princess of Wales proved she would no longer help keep it polished. If this revelation has left you as stunned as the room that night, share your thoughts below. Do you believe Catherine was right to force the truth into the open, or did she risk more than the monarchy can afford? The conversation continues, and history is still being written.